We're on 29b, about a third of the way down the page. First one in the line is Le Porach, and then Tanya. Okay, about a third of the way down the page. Tanya Amar Yasi. Okay, so if you remember yesterday, we'll do a brief review. We said that chulin, which is regular food, the mundane, chulin can reach a second level tumah. We call it sheni. Sheni l'tumah and chulin is posel. Posel means that it's for those that are stringent to make sure that they only eat tahar chulin. They should not be eating it. A first level chulin, a rishon l'tumah of chulin, we call tameh, because it has the potential to create further tumah inside chulin by making something a sheni. Right? Right. Truma, we said the same thing is true up to a shlishi. So a sheni l'truma is tameh, a shlishi l'truma is possible. And by kachim, by the karbonai sacrifices, a shlishi is tameh, a revi is possible. Tanya we learned, Amar V'yasi, minayin l'revi b'kodesh sheposel. How do we know that the concept of a revi exists? Now, I'll soon say it's not so simple that it actually does. It could be it's even possible to make kachim into a chamishi, in which case a revi is actually tameh and not possible. So Rabbi Yossi is trying to prove that the concept of a revi for kachim works. In other words, if you have kachim that's a shlishi and it touches another piece of kachim, that piece of kachim becomes a revi l'tumah. B'dinu, it's kal v'chaymer. Umam echutz v'kipurim shemuter b'truma posel b'kodesh. If you have, one second. How do we know that a revi is posel for kodesh? Okay. So you have mechusik kipurim. Mechusik kipurim is somebody who's one of the 5 types of tumas that are tumah yotzin aguf. Zav zava nida yoledes mitzera. And the halach is even after they become Torah, they go to the mikvah. They're allowed to eat truma after sunset, but they cannot eat kachim until they go to the mikvah. So you see that in Mechutz Kippurim, he does not make truma invalid, but he's still possible kodesh. He's still able to invalidate kachim. We see here that kachim takes an additional level of tumah over truma, and since truma we know could become a shlishi, kachim could become a revi. So and the same thing is true, just like a person who's a Mechutz Kippurim is possible. Similarly, if you have let's say a loaf of bread, a truma, it could also make that's a shlishi, so it's possible. It could make kachim into a revi, and it didn't shias a revi b'kodesh. Okay, v'manu shlishi l'kodesh min haTorah u'revi mikal v'chaymer. We learn that the concept of a shlishi l'kodesh exists from a kal v'chaymer. I'm sorry, from a clear indication in the pasuk. And revi, a 4th level, is from a kal v'chaymer. Shlishi l'kodesh min haTorah. How do I know that kachim becomes tameh with a shlishi? The chsiv v'habasar asher yiga b'chol tameh lo yochal. If the basar here, the meat, is talking about the meat of kodesh, if it touches anything that's tameh, b'chol tameh. What's an example of something that's tameh? A sheni l'chulin. Right? If you have a 2nd level chulin, that's an example of something that's tameh. And the Torah says, "Lo yachal," you can't eat it. Why? Because it's tameh, which means that a third level of kodesh we know for sure that's a pasuk. The 4th level kodesh we know for the fact that a mechusik kippurim indicates to us that kodesh is more stringent than truma. Right? You can be permitted to truma and forbidden to kodesh. Well, if truma has a shlishi as well and kodesh is a shlishi, it must be that kodesh actually has a revi. Okay, revi mikal v'chaymer kedamar, like we explained. Okay. So Amar Rav Yechon doesn't like this kal v'chaymer. Tam beribi, the reasoning of beribi means a smart man. The smart man here is Rabbi Yossi. Any day, I don't understand it. Any demo. I don't understand the reasoning. Because the response to this Kavachaimer is right next to it. Okay, so 1 second.
Base position again, please, Rabbi.
Little more than about a third left of the page. Shuvasi B'tzida is the first words in the line. One second. Okay. So you have a Tvul Yom is a Rishon L'Tumah, right? He touches a food, that becomes a Sheni. That Sheni is able to invalidate Truma as a Shlishi, but it does not make a Revi by Kodesh. It will not invalidate Truma, which can then invalidate Kodesh. I will explain why this is different. The Tanya we learned. Abba Shaul says, Tvul Yom Tchila L'Kodesh. The Tamei Shnayim belivs Salechad. But Tvul Yom is a first level Tumah. It's a Rishon Tumah. And with regards to Kodshim, we say the Tamei Shnayim, that would mean to make a Sheni L'Tumah and a Shlishi L'Tumah, belivs Salechad, and to passel one level, which means that the Revi of Kodesh would be passel, which makes a lot of sense. And this squares perfectly with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Are we together? No? Okay, let's review her. Okay, let's start from the beginning. So we spoke yesterday. When Tumah is transferred, it goes down a level. What's the lowest level Tumah that can be achieved? So a person can become no more than a Rishon Tumah. Rabbinically, maybe he can become a Sheni too. We'll discuss a little bit later. If a person's hands are dirty, he hasn't washed his hands are treated as if they're a Sheni. That's a rabbinical enactment. There are other ways that a person can be treated as a Sheni as well. But typically speaking, biblically, a person is a Rishon. It can't be less than a Rishon Tumah. Food cannot become an Avatumah. We said the only thing that can become an Avatumah is something that could go to the mikveh and become tar. Either person or kalim that can become tar. So you have person Adam B'Kalim can become an Avatumah. A Rishon Tumah, everything can become a Rishon. A Sheni L'Tumah is only food. Chulin can become a Sheni L'Tumah. Truma can even become a Shlishi. Now, like we said before, when the lowest level Tumah of the category is called Puzzle, not Tamei. Tamei means it has the capability of making other things problematic. So Chulin that's a Rishon is Tamei. Chulin that's a Sheni is Puzzle. Truma that's a Sheni is Tamei, because it makes Truma into a Shlishi, which is Puzzle.
You need a chart.
Very simple. Chulin, Sheni, Truma, Shlishi, Kachi, Revi. The bottom level in the category is called Puzzle. The level above it is called Tamei. So if we talk about a Rishon Tumah, he makes 2 levels of Tumah and 1 level of Puzzle. What does that mean? It means that a Rishon Tumah that's a man makes 2 levels Tamei with regard to Kodesh. A Sheni and a Shlishi of Kodesh are both called Tamei. And the 4th level is called Puzzle. That's the opinion of Abba Shaul. That fits perfectly well with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi.
Just one step up is there's a dead body.
A dead body is Afi Avaisa Tumah.
Yeah.
For Ava Tumah, we have a person who touches a dead body.
Yeah.
Or was in the oil, he was in the same room as a dead body, etc. Or he put his hand over a dead body. One of the 7 types of shrotzim, the 7, I call them bugs, but they're not necessarily bugs, rodents, whatever they are. And Tumah Hayot Tzmaragov. So Zav and Nidi Elad Mitzara. Okay. Okay, so the first opinion of Abba Shaul makes a lot of sense. It fits very well with Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Meir says, "Mitame echad upaisel echad." 1 second.
Even Art Scroll couldn't come up with a chart for this one. That's why it's missing.
Okay, as follows. So Abishal is of the opinion that a Tvul Yom has a status of a Rishon L'Tumah. Reb Meir is of the opinion that a Tvul Yom has a status of a Sheni L'Tumah. If he's a Sheni L'Tumah, then how many levels of Kodesh can he make? He makes one Tamei and one Posel. Right? If he's a Sheni, then he makes a Shlishi Tamei and a Revi Posel. So that's Reb Meir's opinion. In other words, Abishal holds that every Tvul Yom is treated at the status of a Rishon. And Reb Meir holds he's treated as the status of a Sheni. Okay, but what we're really coming for now, again, this is part of Rabbi Yochanan's question. Rav Yossi posits that Mechusar Kippurim, it teaches me that there's a difference between Truma and Kachim. Mechusar Kippurim is permitted to Truma, but prohibited to Kodesh. That must the reason for that must be because Kodesh goes down a further level of Tumah, a Revi, basically. So Mechusar Kippurim, who is sort of equivalent to a shlishi. He's not exactly tamei because a person can't be a shlishi. But the fact that you see he's permitted to truma and prohibited to kodesh teaches me that kodesh is another level of truma. Rabbi Yochanan is saying that this is a mistake. It's obviously wrong. Now, obviously, there would be nothing wrong according to Reb Meir and nothing wrong according to Abishal. Right? According to Abishal, it's exactly Rabbi Yossi. We treated Tvul Yom as a Rishon, which means there's two levels of Tumah, one level of Posel. According to Reb Meir, we treat it as a Sheni, which means there's one level of Posel, one level of Tamei, one level of Posel. Okay, last opinion is, 1 second. The rabbis taught, Kishem sheposel oichle truma umashke truma kach posel oichle kodesh umashke kodesh. The rabbis have an interesting opinion here, which is that actually Truma and Kodesh are treated the same in this category. What that means is the Tvul Yom can invalidate them, it can posel them, both Truma and Kodesh. It will not make Kodesh Tamei and then posel, because a Kodesh will maximally become a Shlishi and not a Revi. We together?
Sort of, yeah.
Now, according to this reasoning, Rabbi Yossi obviously doesn't square with the rabbis. The rabbis here are saying that a Tvul Yom who's treated as a Sheni will only make a Shlishi, both for Truma and for Kodesh. And Rabbi Yossi is saying that Kodesh could become a Revi, which is clearly not like the rabbi's opinion. So what's the Gemara's obvious resolution? Who says Rabbi Yossi goes with the rabbis? You can go to either Abishal or Meir. Maskov or Rav Papa asks this question. He says to Rabbi Yochanan, you're asking the obvious question of Rabbi Yossi, but what's so obvious about the question? Why do you presume that Rabbi Yossi goes with the rabbi's opinion? And Rashi points out he could go like Rabbi Meir too. Right? Abishal, the difference between Abishal and Rabbi Meir is how we treat a Tvul Yom. Is it like a Rishon or is it like a Sheni? Either way, it fits perfectly with Rabbi Yossi. The Amar Latamish Na'im V'Lev Salechad. If you go to the Abishal, who treats a Tvul Yom as a Rishon, you have two levels of Tamei, which is Rishon and which is Sheni and Shlishi. V'Lev Salechad, and one level of Posel, which is Revi. So the Gemara says no. Rabbi Yochanan thinks that it can't be Abishal. Isak Abishal Svirle. If you think that he holds like Abishal, Leisi the Revi b'Kodesh me'oichel shabo machmas Tvul Yom. If that's the case, that Rabbi Yossi goes like Abishal, then why does he need to prove that Kodesh has an additional level of Tumah from a Mechusar Kippurim? Mechusar Kippurim is his example. Again, Mechusar Kippurim is the Mitzvah that goes to the mikvah and has sunset. He's permitted to eat truma and not permitted to eat sacrifices. That's your proof that kachim is more stringent than truma. Why doesn't he prove from this statement itself? From when a tful yom touches something, he makes 2 levels of tameh, 1 level of kodesh. That indicates to me that kodesh could become a revi. If you see that the food that comes from tful yom makes a revi b'kodesh, now, so the point here is interesting. So tful yom Abishal treats like a rishon, except that he doesn't treat it like a rishon for chulin. With regard to chulin, he treats it like a sheni. What does that mean? If a tful yom touches a coffee, right? And somebody who's makbid and only eating chulin b'tahara, with purity, he's allowed to drink the coffee because he does not make the coffee tameh, even though he's considered a rishon. But that's only a rishon with regard to truma and kodesh. With regard,
this is only one opinion.
We're going with the opinion of Abishal.
Okay.
So Abishal treats tful yom like a rishon, but only with regard to truma and kodesh. Okay. And the food stuff that comes from the eichel haba machmas tful yom, if he touches a piece of truma or kodesh, it will make it a sheni, which will make something else a shlishi, and potentially up to a revi of kodesh. A revi would be possible. So if you have a food, so now tful yom is rabbinical, and yet we still say it makes a revi l'kodesh. So now let's say I have a genuine shlishi. So for example, we had a guy's hands were dirty when he ate bread. He forgot to wash his hands. The bread becomes a sheni. The bread's a sheni. The bread touched an apple of truma, which became a shlishi, which touched a piece of meat of a sacrifice, which now becomes a revi and apostle. But it should be more obvious that this case produces a revi, because over here the tumah was genuine. The first tumah, which was the loaf of bread, is possible as chulin. For those who are makbid, those who are stringent to only eat chulin b'tahara, that loaf of bread is invalid.
This is only this opinion.
Is only an Abishal. So why doesn't Rabbi Yossi source his original statement from Abishal, from eichel haba machmas tful yom, instead of choosing to bring a proof from Mechusar Kippurim? You together? Mechusar Kippurim. Mechusar Kippurim is the Zav Zav Anidi Yeledis Mitzera.
Oh, okay.
That went to the mikvah and had sunset, so they're allowed to eat truma if they're a kohen. They are permitted to eat truma. They can't go into the Beis Hamikdash. They cannot eat kachim. Okay. Okay. So now maybe I'll prove the Kal V'chomer is incorrect. Why? Maybe you'll tell me that I can't prove from tful yom because tful yom comes from an avatuma. It comes from a high level tumah. And remember, food stuff can never become an avatuma. What's Rabbi Yossi's logic? Mechusar Kippurim also has the same problem. He's originally an avatuma. He started off as a mitzvah or a zav or a zava or neither yeledes, and he originally was an avatuma. And now he's become more lenient to the point where he's in Mechusar Kippurim. So if you'll tell me that food that comes from a tful yom is not a proof, is not a proof to a regular loaf of bread that was a sheni that makes a shlishi and makes a revi, because food that comes from a tful yom originally came from a strict level tumah, a tumah of avatuma. Mechusar Kippurim is the same way. It also began from an avatuma, and Rabbi Yossi is not impressed with the fact that there should be any difference in the amount of levels of tumah that's created, because it had the potential susceptibility to avatuma when it started. Again. Rabbi Yossi's proof is from Mechusar Kippurim. Rabbi Yossi says that Mechusar Kippurim, again, that's a mitzvah becoming tahar, is allowed to eat truma, not allowed to eat kachim. That means that kachim is a level more stringent. It has a finer, it's a finer silk screen. You know, it's a good way to think about it, right? It doesn't let the finest level of tumah get stuck in it. So Mechutz Kippurim indicates to us that Tumah has a Revi. Asks Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan says it's obviously incorrect. Why? Because it's not true. There's no such thing as a Revi for Kachim. It stops at Shlishi. Proof of the matter, the opinion of the rabbis. Says Rav Papa, what do you mean? Who says he goes like the rabbis? He goes like Abba Shaul, which clearly seems to agree with him. The Gemara says he can't go with Abba Shaul, because if he went with Abba Shaul, why didn't he bring Abba Shaul as a source? Why did he need to prove his statement? From Mechutz Kippurim, Abba Shaul made a very clear statement with regard to Eichel Abba Machmas Tvul Yom. A Tvul Yom touches a piece of meat. Tvul Yom, according to Abba Shaul, is treated as a rishon, and it makes a Revi L'Tumah. So why would there be a difference between food that comes from a Tvul Yom or food that itself is a Sheni L'Tumah? Again, food that's a Sheni L'Tumah, you have food that's a rishon, it touches a Sheni, it makes it into a Sheni, touches Trum, it becomes a Shlishi, touches. So why would there be a difference between that scenario and the scenario of Tvul Yom? The Gemara says, hold on. You can't prove from Tvul Yom because Tvul Yom started off as an Avatumah. Okay, if you can't prove from Tvul Yom, then it makes sense that Rabbi Yossi actually is the same opinion as Abba Shaul, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan's question is invalid, because Rabbi Yochanan's presuming he goes with the rabbi's opinion. No, he goes with Abba Shaul's opinion. But why didn't he prove from Abba Shaul's statement of Tvul Yom? Because Tvul Yom you can't prove from, because Tvul Yom started off as an Avatumah.
Tvul Yom, so only a person or something that can be tahor, like made, like can be avatuma.
Go to the mikvah, correct?
That's avatuma, but it's a Tvul Yom could be anything, right? Then it could be a rishon, right? Like couldn't that essentially.
I don't want to go there, but I think you're correct, and I'm not 100% sure. So I prefer.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I think practically speaking, I don't think there's a difference between how you became a Tvul Yom, whether you became a Tvul Yom from a dead person, or you went through the process of the red heifer, paraduma, the a for paraduma, or if you were Tvul Yom because you touched somebody who touched a dead person. And I don't think it would make a difference, but I wasn't 100% sure, so I avoided it. But okay, that's fine. You're right. You're right on it.
I'm trying to understand.
You're right on it. The Tumah Tahara questions. Okay. Okay. We together. Okay. So now the Gemara again. So just very briefly now. Okay. So Rabbi Yossi makes a statement of Revi. Proof of the matter. Mechutz Kippurim. Rabbi Yochanan says incorrect. There's no such thing as a Revi for Kodesh. Look at the rabbi's opinion. They say there's no such thing as a Revi. Says Rav Papa, he doesn't go with the rabbis. He goes with Abba Shaul. Says Rabbi Yochanan counters Rav Papa. It can't be he goes with Abba Shaul. Because if he went with Abba Shaul, he should have brought proof from Abba Shaul himself, from Tvul Yom. Says Rav Papa, he couldn't have brought proof from there. So the question is valid, right? Why? In other words, Rabbi Yochanan could work with Abba Shaul. So why didn't he prove from Abba Shaul's scenario? Because Tvul Yom is unique, because it started off with a stringent level of Tumah. Started off as an Avatumah. Says Rabbi Yochanan, responds Rabbi Yochanan to Rav Papa, still incorrect. Because Mechutz Kippurim has the same problem, same fundamental problem. Mechutz Kippurim also started off with an Avatumah. So there's no difference between Mechutz Kippurim and Tvul Yom. The fact that Rabbi Yossi chooses Mechutz Kippurim over Tvul Yom teaches me that he disagrees with Abba Shaul. And yet he still says Kachim becomes Pasal, Revi. That doesn't stem with that cannot be squared with the rabbi's opinion. So Rabbi Yochanan's question is still valid. Rav Huna's retort is invalid. And it remains a question. What is the explanation of Rabbi Yossi? Why could Kachim become a Revi? According to the rabbis, Kachim only becomes maximally a Shlishi. Okay. We together? Okay. How much time left? What was that?
The sun is like, I pulled the blind down.
Okay, 1 second. Hold on. Okay. Now, just to summarize, so far we've seen 3 opinions on the level of Tumah that Kachim can get. The rabbi's opinion is, take it away. Shlishi, maximally a Shlishi. The opinion of Rabbi Yossi and the traditional opinion, which we always know about, which would be the opinion of Abba Shaul and Rameir as well, is that become a Revi. And who says it can become a Chamishi? So Rabbi Kiva says it. This is Rabbi Kiva. This is Rabbi
There's
Kiva.
one in every crowd there.
This is Rabbi Kiva of the Mishnah. Rabbi Kiva says that Rabbi Kiva in the Mishnah says that chulin could become a shlishi. Now, if chulin could become a shlishi, that means that truma is going to be a revi and kachim is going to be a chamishi. Okay. So now the Gemara makes a brief summary of all the opinions that say that truma maximally becomes a revi. I hope to finish to the bottom of the page here, and then tomorrow we'll get. I don't think we'll have time for today. We'll get into a complicated question with regard to challah, and from then on, after this, the Gemara gets a lot easier. Okay, so Amar Ravasi. Ravasi taught Amar Rav in the name of Rav. Amrila, and some say Amar Rav about Ben Isi. Amar Rav. Reb Meir. So let's start counting here. Reb Meir, the opinion of Reb Meir, the opinion of Reb Yosi, the opinion of Reb Yeshua, the opinion of Reb Elazar and Reb Eliezer. All these opinions include Svirlahu. The Ein Sheni Ois Shlishi b'Chulin. A Sheni will not make a Shlishi in Chulin, which is not like the opinion of Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva in the Mishnah said that you could have a Shlishi b'Chulin. All these opinions disagree. So let's go through each one. Reb Meir, opinion of Reb Meir. The Tanam we learn. Kol haton and bias mayim idivri say from mitame as a kodesh upaisel as a truma umuter b'Chulin ubemaiser. 1 second. Okay. So anything the rabbi said has to go into the water. What does this mean? What's anything that has to go into the water? Your hands, for example, right? Before you want to eat bread, your hands have to go into the water. You have to do netilas yadayim because your hands are treated as a sheni. Additionally, I mentioned to you before that rabbinically it's possible for a person himself to become a sheni. And how does that happen? If you, if a person, so a mikvah is made by, there's two ways to make a mikvah. Go through, one is called a mayan, that's a spring. The other one is called a mikvah. A mikvah is a gathering of water. Difference between a mikvah and a mayan flows, obviously, right? You go to a mountaintop, you see a spring, you can go to the mikvah. You can use it as a mikvah. It's technically called a mayan. And a mikvah is a gathering of water. It's rainwater that gathers off. You're not allowed to use shu'uven. If it's gone into a vessel, let's say you take a tap water and you fill up the mikvah from tap, that is not a kosher mikvah. Exactly why, a separate discussion. Okay, for a different time. Anyway, if a person goes into a mikvah, I don't mean a mikvah, I mean he goes into a swimming pool. Let's say that way. Better way. He goes into a swimming pool. A swimming pool is a gathering of water. It's not a kosher mikvah, and it's made with it's large enough, but it's made with tap water, presumably. Take that for granted. Okay. He goes to the mikvah. The rabbi said he's considered a sheni l'tumah. Why did they do that? Because they didn't want anyone to confuse the swimming pool with the mikvah. Okay. So in any of these scenarios, what happens? Metame es hakodesh, the person's considered a sheni, right? He makes kodesh tameh, which means the kodesh is a shlishi, right? Upaisel, and he invalidates the revi. Oh, I'm sorry, paisel a truma. He invalidates truma, which means he makes truma into a shlishi. Umuter b'chulin. He's permitted to eat chulin. Why is he permitted to eat chulin? Because chulin obviously does not become a shlishi. B'chulin b'maiser. Divrei Meir, it's the opinion of Meir. V'chachamim aiser b'maiser. The chachamim forbade him to eat maiser. Why do they forbade him to eat maiser? It's a rabbinical, separate discussion. Regardless, both Reb Meir and the rabbis both agree chulin will not become more tameh than a shlishi, than a sheni. It becomes pasal at a sheni, it will not become a shlishi. Okay, Rabbi Yosi, opinion of Rabbi Yosi, hadamar, and this is the Gemara we just saw. Rabbi Yosi holds that chulin becomes a sheni, truma becomes a shlishi, revi becomes a, chulin becomes a sheni, truma a shlishi, kaidesh or revi. Okay, Demi say because if chulin could become a shlishi, Lacy l'revi b'truma v'chamishi b'kodesh. Because if it was the case that chulin could become a shlishi, then truma would be a revi and kachim would be a chamishi. So obviously he holds that chulin is only a sheni, maximally a sheni, possible at the level of sheni. Okay. Rabbi Yeshua, the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, the time we learned, Rabbi Elazar Omer, ha'oichel rishon. If somebody eats a food that's a rishon l'tumah, he becomes a rishon l'tumah, which is unique, because typically when tumah is transferred, it descends a level. But the first opinion here, Rabbi Elazar's opinion, is that no, tumah doesn't. If you eat it, you become like the food. It's a rabbinical enactment. If you eat a sheni, you become a sheni. If you eat a shlishi, you become a shlishi. Hold on, what does that mean? That means chulin can become a shlishi. 1 second, hold on. One second. Yeah, okay. Bishur says, sheni. If a person eats a rishon l'toma, he becomes a sheni l'toma. If he eats a sheni l'toma, we still treat him as a sheni l'toma because we consider this is rabbinical. But if he eats a shlishi of truma, which is tamei, because he violated the law, he ate something truma that was tamei. You're not allowed to eat truma that's tamei. So then he becomes a sheni. He goes up a level of tuma. Okay. Sheni v'kodesh ve'ein sheni v'truma. This is only with regard. 1 second. Yeah, this is only with regard to kodesh, but not in regard to truma. So if a kohen eats truma that's tamei, he is allowed to continue eating truma that's tamei. But truma that is tahor. You're never allowed to eat truma that's tamei. So a kohen went ahead and violated the law, and he ate tamei truma. He's allowed to continue eating tahor truma. However, he's not allowed to eat kachim now. When we treat him for kachim, we treat him like a sheni. It's a rabbinical enactment. Shlishi sheni b'kodesh v'ein sheni v'truma b'chulin shenatzu al taharas truma. 1 second. Okay. And this is all true only of a person who is stringent to eat everything with b'tahara, so that he can eat truma whenever he wants. Person is not makbid, then that we never consider him tahor. In other words, a person who's stringent, that he always eats his food in b'tahara, he's allowed to eat meat, he's allowed to eat truma without going to the mikvah. But a person who's not like that always needs to go to the mikvah. So there's no reason to make all these enactments. Because there's never a presumption that he hasn't eaten. In other words, his snack in his pocket is tummy.
There's always this.
There's always
you said before there's this effect that the doubt is right that for a person, if they're involved, that they are tamei, and if it is something like that is not a person, and we didn't see if they're not involved, then
so this is not about doubt.
Not about doubt.
Not at all. So this is sort of I understand what you're asking. A person who does not eat his food b'tahara always is never presumed to be tahor, because he's always considered to be potentially make the truma tamei. So if that guy wants to eat truma, he always has to go to the mikvah.
Yeah.
This is a guy who eats random food, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's kosher certified, presumably. But he eats from anybody's house, and he doesn't make sure the food he's eating is tahor. So we presume
from anybody's house that
makes
him
him
careful, then he's
exactly. So he always has to go to the mikvah. Now, if the guy's stringent to always eat b'tahara, so then we give him these extra level chumras. So this is all true, but truma b'chulin shenat al taharas a truma in al taharas a kodesh loy. Al makasavar ein sheni ois shlishi b'chulin. 1 second.
anybody could be.
It's easier when you eat it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rashi changes it here. Basically, this is only true of somebody who's eating his stuff with tahara. If he's eating his stuff without tahara, in other words, he could sometimes eat non-tamei chulin, which is perfectly permissible. So he always has to go to the mikveh anyway. So then we're not concerned for any of these xeris of shlishi, which means that that chulin will never become a shlishi. It will always be treated as a sheni. Okay. Rabbi Lazar, the opinion of Rabbi Lazar, the Tanya we learned. Rabbi Lazar Omer, Shlosh and Shavin. With regard to Rishon L'Tumah, everybody's the same. However, once you start going further, it makes a difference. Harishon Sheba Kodesh, V'Sheba Chulin, V'Sheba Truma. A Rishon of Kodesh, Chulin, and Truma, Metame Shnayim, Upaisel Echad B'Kodesh. Okay, so the first level Tumah is identical. With regard to Kodesh, it makes two levels of Tumah. That would be, again, Rishon would make Sheni Shlishi, and then Revi would be Pasal. Metame Echad Paisel Echad B'Truma. It makes one Tameh and one Pasal by Truma. That would be a Sheni and a Shlishi in Truma. Upaisel Echad B'Chulin. With regard to Chulin, it makes one level Pasal, which would be a Sheni. Clearly, this indicates to us that Clearly, this indicates to us that he holds that Chulin would not become a Shlishi. It only becomes a Sheni because it says it makes one level. Chulin that's a Rishon passes level 2, which is a Sheni. Okay, we'll stop here. The next Gemara is also difficult, but then the rest of it's very easy. And getting falling a little behind, hopefully tomorrow we'll catch up. And
There is a lengthy summary.